Party peoples of the interwebs, if you had any doubt that we were living through George Orwell's 1984, wait until you hear the news coming out of Canada.
We have always been at war with East Asia.
Viva Fry, former Montreal litigator turned current Florida rumbler, in my home office with yet another beautiful Florida sunset behind me. If you had any doubt as to the abject insanity, the political retardation coming out of Canada, Mark Carney, the newly anointed Prime Minister, in one of his first acts as Prime Minister, is to undo the carbon tax, at least as relates to consumers, we'll get into it, is to undo the carbon tax that the Liberal Party passed in 2018.
Starting next year, it will no longer be free to pollute anywhere in Canada. We are going to place a price on the pollution that causes climate change from coast to coast to coast. And we're also going to help Canadians adjust to this new reality.
Trudeau's carbon tax plan would put a price on carbon emissions for both consumers and carbon producers.
This plan is wrong for taxpayers, it's wrong for the economy, and it's wrong for the environment.
Despite Trudeau claiming Canadians will get more back than they put in, Scheer believes regular Canadians will get the short end of the stick, while big polluters get a free card.
Canadians know that a measly $12.50 a month will not cover the true cost of this carbon tax. Life is going to get a lot more expensive for hardworking Canadians and families, and large industrial polluters are getting off scot-free.
With less than a year to go before the next federal election, carbon tax may very well end up being the big ballot box question Canadians will vote on.
And no, I'm not joking. I'm not being hyperbolic. This is the very same Liberal Party. It's got a new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, although he's got largely the same cabinet as under Justin Trudeau. He's coming in here now, and in an act of political unity, in an act of progress in Canada, he is literally undoing a 2018 law passed by the Liberals. Liberal Party at Liberal_Party, Mark Carney got it done. Mark Carney canceled the carbon tax. To which I replied, Viva Fry at the Viva Fry, got it done? By canceling the tax the Liberals passed in the first place? Holy hell, you guys are retarded. The Guardian, 2018, 6 years old, Canada passed a carbon tax that will give most Canadians more money. Now there is some nuance to this because Mark Carney only undid the consumer side of the carbon tax. They're still going to leave in the corporate business side of the carbon tax, but they literally undid a portion of the law that they themselves passed in 2018. It was Trudeau's own initiative, and if you're not familiar with the carbon tax, let's just go read from the Liberal website as to what that carbon tax is that they partially just undid. From the Liberal Party's own website, support the Liberal plan for pricing carbon pollution. And then you go read on the policy side, a sustainable clean growth economy is necessary for our collective health and prosperity, both for today's families and for future generations. That's why Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government have announced a pan-Canadian approach for pricing carbon pollution. Starting in 2018, provinces and territories will have carbon pricing in place. They will either have a direct price on carbon pollution starting at $10 per ton and rising by $10 each year to $50 per ton in 2022, or they will have a cap and trade with emission cuts in line with both Canada's targets and to the reductions expected in places with a direct price. It's a vital step to grow our economy and protect our environment, and will reduce the pollution that threatens our clean air and oceans and the health of Canadians. Give Canada an edge in building a clean growth economy. Make Canadian businesses more innovative and competitive. Develop new and exciting job opportunities for middle-class Canadians? So you're in to continue this fight together. Oops, we could not locate your form. How on earth a carbon tax is going to create job opportunities for middle-class Canadians? Don't ask too many questions, stupid. Just do what the party tells you. But that is the carbon tax. And they did, in fact, impose it on Canadians to a very burdensome degree. This is what was going on in the East Coast Maritimes of Canada.
As part of its national plan to put a price on carbon, the Trudeau government imposed its federal carbon tax on provincial holdouts that don't have their own plans: Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, and New Brunswick. It starts at $20 per ton. For gas, that means an extra 4.4 cents per liter. But the tax ratchets up every year until 2022, when it more than doubles.
From a CBC article from 2018, how the carbon tax will affect you in 2019. federal government has imposed a carbon tax on greenhouse gas emissions in New Brunswick. Elizabeth Fraser, CBC News, posted October 24, 2018. The federal government will impose a carbon tax on greenhouse gas emissions in New Brunswick to fight climate change. Consumers in New Brunswick have 6 more months before they start feeling the carbon tax plan imposed by the federal government. On Tuesday, the federal Liberals announced they would impose a carbon tax on greenhouse gas emissions in New Brunswick and 3 other provinces to fight climate change. The federal levy of $20 a ton for large emitters begins January 1st and rises to $50 in 2022. A levy on fuel will be added in April. Set aside the fact that Canada, I believe, emits a global amount of 1.25% of global emissions. Even if you think emissions are the issue here, China is a rapacious polluter, pollutes more than the next 3 or 4 countries. But don't worry, all of the policies imposed on Canada to cripple the Canadian economy are only going to help China. I'm sure that's just a happenstance accident to the benefit of China, which has infiltrated the Canadian government. And needless to say, this policy, this carbon tax, was always wildly unpopular. The Conservatives used it as a tool against the Liberals. And now that Mark Carney's come into power, he is just going to rewrite history, pretend that it wasn't the Liberals themselves that passed this terrible, wildly unpopular policy, kept it in effect for years while crippling Canadians, consumer Canadians. Now Mark Carney's going to come in, pretend to be the hero by literally rewriting history. If you have not read George Orwell's 1984, you gotta read it, but here's a passage. The speech had been proceeding for perhaps 20 minutes when a messenger hurried on the platform and a scrap of paper was slipped into the speaker's hand. He unrolled and read it without pausing in his speech. Nothing altered in his voice or manner or in the content of what he was saying, but suddenly the names were different. Without words said, a wave of understanding rippled through the crowd. Oceania was at war with East Asia. The next moment there was a tremendous commotion. The banners and posters with which the square was decorated were all wrong. Quite half of them had the wrong faces on them. It was sabotage. The agents of Goldstein had been at work. There was a riotous interlude while posters were ripped from the walls, banners torn to shreds and trampled underfoot. The spies performed prodigies of activity in clambering over the rooftops and cutting the streamers that fluttered from the chimneys. But within 2 or 3 minutes, it was all over. The orator, still gripping the neck of the microphone, his shoulders hunched forward, his free hand clawing in the air, had gone straight on with his speech. 1 minute more, and the feral roars of rage were again bursting from the crowd. The hate continued exactly as before, except that the target had been changed. We were always at war with East Asia, and the Liberals were always against the consumer portion of the carbon tax that they passed in 2018. This is an absolute ridiculous outrage, and if you don't find it outrageous, then just go ahead and vote for Carney, because the new boss is worse than the old boss. And here is the moment when Mark Carney, in his first glorious act as newly anointed Prime Minister of Canada, signed away that thing by order in council. By the way, order in council means it didn't actually go through any legislative process, and it's arguable as to whether or not Mark Carney can even undo the consumer portion of the carbon tax by way of order in council. But here he is doing the glorious work of undoing the mistakes of his own party, and listen to the amount of times he says when he's speaking. It drives me crazy.
We will be eliminating the Canada fuel charge, the consumer fuel charge, immediately, and we will be ensuring that those Canadians who have received rebates will continue to receive a rebate in the next quarter. The next payment is before the end of April. This will make a difference to hard-pressed Canadians, but it is part of a much bigger set of measures that this government is taking to ensure that we fight against climate change, that our companies are competitive, and the country moves forward. So it's my honor, on behalf of my colleagues, to sign this order.
So that is the newly anointed Prime Minister in all his glory. And if you had any doubts as to how the state-funded media is reporting on this story, bear in mind, by the way, the Liberal Party said they want to double the funding for state-funded media, the CBC-AL, while the Conservatives have announced that they want to defund the CBC. So who do you think the media is going to be loyal to? We live in an absolute socialist, communist, totalitarian, authoritarian statist society in Canada. However you want to call it, the media is bought out and they are the lapdogs of the government and not the watchdogs. What do you think they had to report on this? Well, it was always a wildly unpopular policy. So Mark Carney is doing the right thing by eliminating this wedge issue, which the Conservatives were using against the Liberals. That's how the media is spinning it. Mark Carney being a glorious, wonderful new leader. All hail the new leader.
Let's kind of peel back a little bit and talk about, we know that this was promised, but it happened today. And tell us more about it.
Yeah, it happened very fast. Mark Carney, when speaking with reporters earlier today, hinted that this could be coming immediately, essentially as quickly as he could do it. And that's what we, in fact, saw. So right after being appointed, the new prime minister, he met with his cabinet. It's interesting, too, to see Mark Carney in there with his cabinet. That's kind of a unique thing. Normally, the press, people are not allowed into that cabinet room when they're in their meeting. And so the fact that media were brought in there to see Mark Carney sign that is a significant sort of marker and a significant strategy there from the Liberal government. Mark Carney himself was an advocate for the consumer price on carbon, but like many Liberals has moved away from it just because it became so wildly unpopular with the Canadian public.
Can you get over that quality journalism coming from state-funded media up in Canada? No, I don't think you can. But if you want to, you can go and make sure that you are subscribed and have notifications turned on to my channel so that you know when a video pops up. Drop a comment in the comment section. It feeds the algorithm. It helps the channel grow. It takes 5 seconds to do and it's totally free. But that's exactly what's going on in Canada. Canada is a fraction of the global emissions. Even if you think global emissions are contributing to this climate crisis, China is the #1 polluter. And what is Canada doing right now? Threatening retaliatory tariffs against America, threatening to block Starlink, and threatening to impose 100% tariffs on Tesla vehicles. You know, the green vehicles that are good for the environment, if you believe that story. So they're going to impose tariffs on Tesla green vehicles. And who's going to benefit from that?
China.
It is absolute abject nonsense. After a decade of devastating Canada and Canadians, after imposing this carbon tax on consumers in provinces that are really struggling to begin with. After 7 years of that, Mark Carney comes in and says, yeah, we're going to undo the damage. We're going to solve the problem that we caused. That is the Liberal Party. If you vote for that, you are an idiot. And with that said, the sun has set. If you like what I do, you know what to do. But most importantly, exercise, eat healthy sunlight, get some vitamin D, talk to people in real life, and now you know your vlog. Peace out, peeps. Booyah!
Also, Chrystia Freeland taking questions. She is back in She is back in cabinet after leaving in December. We'll remember it was quite an extreme situation where she was supposed to present the fall economic update for the federal government and then resigned that morning. She's back in Mark Carney's cabinet now as the Transport and Internal Trade Minister. So talking there about the carbon tax and weighing in on the fact that she said that this was a matter of the Liberals listening to the concerns of Canadians and moving on this issue, saying that this was clear and decisive action. Now, we've heard from the official opposition, the Conservatives, saying they feel like this Carney cabinet is the Trudeau cabinet because they are right in saying that most of the members of this new cabinet are former members of Justin Trudeau's cabinet, apart from a few new additions. And they're concerned that, the Liberals could, if they wanted to, bring back carbon pricing. Will that happen? Well, I don't think politically it would be a good sign for the Liberals. And so then the question now going forward is, where do we go from here? We know that although Carney was coy when asked about it earlier today, about what he was going to do next when he was going to call an election, all signs point to the fact that we will be heading into an election probably in the next week or so. And you only have to look at the opposition saying they are willing to bring down the government at the earliest possible time to know that the Liberals would quite likely want to call an election on their own terms here.